So, welcome everyone. This is the online players meeting, trying something a little bit different this year for the Hyzlander. And just thought this might help things move along a bit quicker over the weekend if you've all got an opportunity to check out the players meeting as and when you have time instead of trying to rush something in the mornings. So what we'll do, we'll have a little run through the schedule and sponsors and bit of housekeeping around the campground while you're there, and then we'll go through most of the holes, any ones that require it in detail, and then that'll be that, and then it'll just be a matter of getting out on the course and playing, which I'm sure you are all looking forward to. So first things first, thanks to the Waiora Scout Camp for having us again, second year this time. Hopefully we can keep it going. Obviously want to make sure everyone's sort of doing their bit by behaving and not causing any issues after the tournament's done. But as well as that, let's get on to some other stuff and say thank you to all the people that have supported the tournament and have made it possible in the form that we have. Obviously, you guys are all aware now that we've managed to bring Westside Discs on as a sponsor for this year. We're hoping that that's going to be something we can move forward with and hopefully keep them on board for a good few years. But we'll see how we go year one this time, and like I say, we're all very happy to have them on board. It's great to see a big company getting involved with an event over in New Zealand. I know a number of us down in Dunedin, myself included, use their discs and love their discs. So if you've got any that you are wanting to try, I think between Max and myself and a number of the other players down here, we've got most molds covered. So if you've been looking at any and you're keen to give some a shot, let us know. I'm sure Martin and Iran from Small Planet and Vortica will probably have a good amount of Westside stock, either on hand or back at base. So if there's anything you want before the tournament as well, get hold of them and they can probably bring some stuff down. But other than that, thanks again to Westside for coming on board. Obviously there's other sponsors as well, so we'll just give those guys a mention. Harpoon Cold Brew Coffee. They're a Dunedin-based company. They sell nationwide. If you guys were here last year, you might have got some of their product last year as well. They were pretty keen to get involved last year. Todd, one of the main guys involved with that, has been involved with the club for a while, and he's been awesome helping set up the course and at the Scout Camp last year, and yeah, just basically keen to get it going and get the tournament going. So thanks to them. Obviously, Shopmaker Web Design. Those guys, I mean Akira, have done the website for us. He's been outstanding in the time he's given us, and we couldn't have made this event what it is without his input. So thanks very much to Akira. Obviously, if you guys are looking at any web stuff at any point, look Akira up and he'll do a great job for you. On top of that, we've got Placemakers in Dunedin have helped us out. We're looking at making some alteration to the course, and materials wise these guys have been pretty awesome in giving us some great prices on product that we normally wouldn't be able to afford to do what we've been trying to do. You'll hopefully see what we mean when you get here. And so pretty stoked to have them help us out. We've got Small Planet Disc Sports on board as well. They came on board first sponsor we had last year. Super keen. Those guys, Iran and his crew, are always keen to get involved, so look after them where you can. Obviously we've still got Vortica Sport. They've been really helpful. They were huge last year, helping us get the event running, and this year they've stayed with us and they've put up an awesome ace price. So someone who's keen to get some disc flying at the change from the tee, you might get yourself a pretty sweet ace prize from them. Should be noted that ace prize, if it doesn't go, we'll be having a playoff after all the rounds are complete for the weekend. So if you may still get a shot even if you don't get an ace. It's got some local companies as well. So we've got the Vogel Street Kitchen, a really nice cafe in town. They've given us some support, some vouchers and things like that, and we'll be able to give some of those away at the weekend. If you're coming from north of Dunedin when you're heading down and you feel you need a lunch or a coffee before you come into the scout camp, drop in there. They're just near the one-way south of the centre of town. Really nice place, one of my favourite cafes in town. The other people we've got the Wobbly Goat Cafe. They'll be providing a lunch on Saturday. They're based at Outram, just the south side of Dunedin. So if you're coming from the airport or Central or through from Middlemarch or something like that to get into town, you'll be able to stop in there and grab a coffee at lunch on the way through. Really nice place for a sort of a chilled out coffee just out of town. And we have Philadelphia's restaurant as well. That's where we're having our gathering on Friday after the practice day. Well-known pizza restaurant in Dunedin. They've been around for years. Just up by Botanic Gardens, sort of on the way up to the Chingford Park course. So we'll be having some space there on the Friday night. We may get some more sponsors through after we've done this video, so we'll post about, I'll give a bit of a spotlight on most of our sponsors in the run up to the tournament. But up until then, thanks to everyone that's on board at the moment. We couldn't do it without them, so please, where you can, support these guys. Same as in any tournament around the country, if you look after the sponsors, you'll see the tournaments get better and better the more people we get on board. So yeah, look after them and the tournaments will continue to grow. So moving on from that, accommodation on site. A lot of you, if you're staying on site, you would have booked accommodation. This is either in the cabins down by the last hole, the island hole. If you've booked accommodation, we will be putting a list on each, basically each door in each room of who's in what room. So please don't just go in and have a free-for-all like is possible to happen. So if you're there early and there's no signs up, just get out and do your practice, and then we'll sort the rooms out after you've got back from practice. We'll try and do it as soon as possible, but the chances are we may not be able to do it before you dive in. If the group that's been in there the few days before we get in haven't left, we can't throw them out of the rooms. So yeah, please respect that. We don't want to sort of be reorganising everything at the last minute. So we will, if there's no sign with names on the doors of the huts, yeah, please wait until they're up there and get in once you're in, and we'll have everyone in good order and good time. You'll have plenty of time in the afternoon, so no rush. So yeah, the rooms are either going to be in the cabins, or there's a bunch of rooms up in the main hall. So once you get there, you should know before you get there whether you're in the hall or the cabins. But yeah, if you're not sure, get in touch with myself when you get there, and we'll figure it out. I should have a list, so we'll go from there. But that's pretty easy. So catering wise for the weekend, Friday night we're going out to Philadelphia's. For anyone that's keen, there was a part of the entry form saying whether you were going to be going out for the Friday meal. So if you're there, we've got numbers. We've got to give the numbers to Philadelphia's to make sure they know how many of us to expect. If you've changed your mind from what you put on your entry form, please let us know before the day, and we'll give them an up-to-date set of numbers before we head out there. Hopefully a couple of days before, so they can prep themselves and make sure they're all set for a big bunch of people coming in. That'll be from 6:30 till 9 on the Friday, so it should be enough time for you guys to get quite a bit of practice in, and then we'll head out there. You don't have to come straight down at 6:30, but yeah, kind of we'll shut up what we're going to be doing down there by 9. You can stay longer if you want, but yeah, that's when we've got it booked until. Probably bear in mind over the weekend, it's a little ways out of Mosgiel or Dunedin, depending on where you come through. You'll need to bring everything you need for the weekend for food and that if you're going to cook on site. It's only 10 minutes into Mosgiel if you do need something, but if you don't want to be going back and forward, just bring everything in with you. On the Saturday, we're having lunch provided from the Wobbly Goat Cafe in Outram. There'll be a pretty substantial sandwich and a sweet treat in there as well. So it should be something you can take around with you on the course. Bear in mind, because of the format this year, you'll want to have probably some food out on the course with you, because there won't be a lunch break as such. We'll explain that when we get down to the schedule for the tournament. So yeah, make sure you've got a few snacks and things with you to get you through the round. And I think that probably about covers it food-wise. On the Sunday, we were supposed to be having a food cart, same guys as last year coming out, but they've had to cancel at late notice. So we're trying to sort an alternative out, but if you don't hear from anything or from us about anything, be prepared to have your own food and bring some lunch out for yourself for the Sunday. But we'll endeavour to get someone out to provide food for everyone, so we don't have to do too much running around. Now on to the schedule. We've changed things up a little bit this year. In response to sort of, I think last year, finding 2 lots of 18 a little bit hard work on the course down here. We have made quite a few changes to the course, so we're now playing on a 25-hole course, and we will also, on top of that, we'll be using tee times rather than a shotgun start that we've traditionally had a number of tournaments in New Zealand. So the tee times on the Saturday will be starting at 8 AM, so that'll be the earliest hole, and we'll publish the list of tee times and groupings from there. One thing we're hoping this will allow you guys to do is actually watch a bit of disc golf while you're down here as well, not just play. So you'll be able to go and support your mates. And if you're really keen, you can go out and carry a bag for someone if you've got a few hours to spare. And should just hopefully have a bit more of a atmosphere around the place, and you won't just be go all weekend. You'll be able to sit back and relax and enjoy some time in the scout camp for a bit as well while you're there. It's a pretty awesome venue, and we're pretty lucky to be able to get in there. So if you've got time to chill out, hopefully it'll make for a nice relaxing weekend instead of rushing around like a mad thing for the whole weekend. So yeah, we're hoping to be done by probably mid-afternoon on the Saturday. We are planning to have some entertainment wise, sort of a few games and that kind of thing, which our own Clutha champ Steve Reed will be looking after, and we'll have more info on that soon, probably on the day, to be honest, but we have got a few plans going on there. If we figure it out 100% early, we'll let you know, but at the moment we'll wait till everyone's finished and their rounds and then get into it. On the Sunday, we have said that depending on how the tee times go, we may go back to a shotgun start, but I think we'll probably stick with the tee times, and it'll allow everyone to, or a lot of the groups actually, to follow the lead cards a bit towards the end of the day as well. So it should be a bit of fun that way, bit of interest created, and hopefully we'll be able to get everyone finished and have a reasonably early prize giving and get everyone away without having to get home at midnight, that kind of thing. So fingers crossed that'll work out smoothly. It's something new for us to be trying, so bear with us over that, and I think that should work quite nicely and should make for a good tournament. So with that, we'll move on to looking at the course itself. Like I said, there's been a few changes. We've gone to 25 holes, and there's I think most of the holes will be self-explanatory from the information in the player's manual, but we'll go through them in as much detail as each one needs. Some of them will need more than others, so we'll probably brush over a few of the more basic holes, and we'll spend a bit of time on a couple others. And any questions, you can get in touch with us either online or when you get to the tournament. First off, we'll just go over the rules. Obviously, it's the Hyzlander is a C-tier PDGA event, so all PDGA rules over the tournament rounds and for the weekend will be in effect. So make sure you're familiar with these. You can download the PDGA Players Handbook and Tournament Handbook online and have it as a PDF on your phone. And you can also download the Players Manual for the Hyzlander from our event page on Facebook. So download at least the Players Manual for the weekend for the Hyzlander if you don't want to look all the way through the PDGA book, but I recommend it. Just so you can check each hole as and when you get to them over the weekend, so there's no confusion when you're on a hole of how to play it. But in terms of the rules, we won't go through all of them. There's a few specified in the player's book over and above the standard PDGA ones, and some of them are just to reinforce the PDGA ones. But we'll go over a couple just now, just to make sure. Roads, unless we've specified it on any of the holes, all roads in and around the scout camp will be playing as out of bounds. There are a few sort of four-wheel drivey tracks around the place as well. If it's not really a defined road, we'll probably have marked it with OB if there's an OB area. But if there's any if anyone's unsure, you can take a picture and play a provisional as well, and go from there once you get back, and we can decide once you finished your round. But don't spend too long mulling over decisions if you're not sure. If there's any sort of ambiguity or you're not sure, you always give the player the benefit of the doubt in that respect. So yeah, that shouldn't take too long. The other thing with the course as it is, with the exception of one hole, which is hole 6, the boundary fence around the scout camp is the out of bounds line. The only exception, as I said, is hole 6, where the boundary fence plays as a hazard line, and yeah, if you go into that, you're playing the grass area there as a hazard. But that's the only exception to the boundary fence. One thing that's worth remembering with the course as it is the rough can be quite rough if you manage to get off the fairway. So bear in mind that you can have the option to rethrow at any time for a one-stroke penalty on the course, which sometimes can be a beneficial thing. So think about where you are. If you're in the middle of the bush and you've got no shot, there's often a good option to take that rule and make use of it. The only other rule we'd kind of like people to kind of be pretty good with is the 30-second rule. That can take a while out on this course, similar to the likes of Paradise or something like that. So if we can keep everyone within that 30-second rule, it'll speed things up a hell of a lot. So that clock starts once you get to your disc and it's your turn to play. So 30 seconds. You shouldn't need to take too long on shots, so be respectful of other players and groups, and don't take forever when you're taking a shot. So yeah, that's I think all the rules we need to go to. Everything else, if you've got any questions, will be in that player's handbook that I've mentioned a couple of times now. So again, make sure you download it, and yeah, go from there. So with that, onto the holes, starting with hole one. Hole one is a par 4. The AT is 140 meters, the BT is 115 meters. Both those tees are up on the top by the finishing hole. This hole's exactly the same as it was last year. So the out of bounds area will just clarify to make sure how that's going to play. We'll avoid any of the issues we encountered last year with that hole. So from the tee, as soon as your disc comes across the road, that's entering the out of bounds. And for your disc to be back in play, back in bounds, you have to either cross into or land in the lower field. That's the area in front of the lower car park by the scout den, and yeah, left of the path up to the memorial hall. So you need to clear that area. If you fail to do so on your tee shot and you land in that big solid red marked area in the handbook, you will go for your next shot directly to the drop zone, which will be just in front of the car park on the lower field. That will be marked and will be fairly self-explanatory from there. With any subsequent shots, if you manage from there to somehow land back in that same drop zone, sorry, not in the drop zone, in the out of bounds area, you will just play that shot from where it crossed into the out of bounds. So you won't have to go back to the drop zone if you somehow throw back into the out of bounds. The only other out of bounds area or line on that hole is along the edge into the stream. So the stream along the left-hand side of the lower field will be playing as out of bounds as well. That will just be a standard out of bounds rule. So you'll go from where it crossed into the stream, even from the tee shot. So if you manage to somehow go long and into the stream from the tee, you'll be taking your next shot from where it crossed into that out of bounds, not from the drop zone. I think other than that, that hole should be fairly simple. Make sure you're sort of familiar with the areas on the map that are out of bounds. They will be marked nice and clearly this year. So from there you should have no issues. So that's hole one done. So from that we'll move on to hole two. There's not too much to say about hole two. It's you are crossing the stream, so obviously the stream is going to be out of bounds on that hole. You have a road behind the basket, and there is going to be an out of bounds area between the fairways for number 2 and number 8. But I think for most people that won't be an issue. That hole's fairly simple. On to hole 3. That hole is what we knew last year as hole 8. It's a par 3, 50 meters. It's up on that ridge in front of the wooden fort on the hill. We have changed the route up to that this year. So from the basket on hole 2, you essentially walk right in front of the tee for 8. If there's people teeing off, give way to them, let them tee off first. And then you're going straight up the hill from that tee. We have spent a bit of time putting in some new steps into there and hoping that will make the route up to the top of the hill a little bit easier and a little bit shorter. But once you get up there, yeah, take your time getting up there. There's no rush. Everyone's got to get up the same hill. You don't need to go up there at world record pace or anything. Just give yourself some time, and you shouldn't be too out of breath by the time you get to the top. But by all means, have a bit of a breather when you get to the top, because everyone will be in the same situation. It is a big hill, but yeah, you'll get up there fine, and then you can get on with playing the hole. The hole itself hasn't changed, other than the fact we've added an out of bounds line along the left hand side. This is mainly to stop people ending up in positions where they just can't play from and are completely blocked. So if that's the case, if you've gone past that OB line, which I don't think will affect too many people, you will have the choice of either playing from where it was last in bounds or from a drop zone, which will be marking a little bit further back on the ridge. So yeah, I mean that hole there, you guys should all know it from last year. I would recommend using a spotter. I know it's not very long, but the discs do have a habit of disappearing in there. We had one disc that was lost there last year on that hole, and we only found it, I think, a month ago, and that was about 9 meters away from the basket location. So it's not very long bush up there. It's only about probably 100 mil off the ground, but it does tend to hide the discs quite well. So use a spotter where you can and make sure you know where the discs land before you move on. Moving on to hole 4. Hole 4 is a new hole this year. It's another one up in the trees. Goes from a little way down the hill from the basket for 3, and it comes out on the far break. So that one, there's no OB on this one. It's a bit more of a traditional tunnel shot. It's downhill, 70 meters, par 3. And a good shot should put you in position to get a putt there. And the next hole, hole 5, this one is exactly the same as last year. Nothing will have changed here apart from the tee setup, but the location will be the same. This is 129 meters. It's a par 3. Sounds quite long for a par 3, but it is actually relatively gettable for the bigger arms for sure. The only issues you've got here, we have along the whole right hand side, we've got the boundary line from for the scout camp. So as I mentioned earlier, that's all OB, and that actually wraps around the back of the green at the bottom of the hill as well. On top of that, you've got the road coming into the scout camp on the left of the green. So yeah, you've a little bit more out of bounds once you get down to the green, but you haven't actually got too much to contend with on the way down other than that right hand side. So yeah, that one there should play as it did last year. Good fun downhill hole, so you can get a full flight on the disc. On to hole 6. This was the one I mentioned in the introduction. So this is the only exception to the boundary fence rule. So if you go long over the boundary on this one, you're not going out of bounds. There's a hazard area behind the basket between the road and the fence line. So anything on the grass or short of the road and past the fence, you're in a hazard area. So you'll be playing that as it lies for a 1-shot penalty. If you manage to somehow go long onto the road, you're playing it from where it crossed into the OB for a 1-shot penalty. But I don't think that will affect too many people due to the low ceiling to get that far out. Number 7. This was a fairly, I think, popular hole last year. Nothing has really changed. The basket has been pushed back a little bit on this, and there's one little extra bit of, well, not an extra bit, but an extension to the out of bounds behind T8 to avoid any issues of playing right behind those guys on the tee if you've got groups in front of you. So it's par 4, 180 meters for the AT, 160 meters for the BT. As I mentioned, the road all the way along is out of bounds, as is there's a building called Mitchell's Cottage, I believe it is, on the right, which is a private scout hut. Anything across the road and on that side is out of bounds. All this should be marked by the time you get there. And obviously you've then got the island green formed by the road and the stream at the end of it. So yeah, that I think is all the issues you're going to come up against on that hole. So we'll move on to hole 8. This is just a slightly tweaked hole from last year. This is an 70 2 meter par 3, very slightly uphill. As I said, on hole 2, there's going to be an out of bounds area between the two fairways to separate the two holes. But other than that, it's fairly simple. There is a stream some way behind the basket, but again, I don't think that'll cause too many people to have issues. On to 9. So the slight alteration to hole 8 has allowed us to lengthen hole 9 a little bit. It's an uphill par 4, 143 meters. The only out of bounds on this hole is the stream. So as long as you're staying in the field, you guys should be nice and safe and shouldn't have too many issues. Obviously there's a few trees around, but yeah, there's no out of bounds other than the stream. And then hole 10, again, this is another one that is unchanged from last year, with the exception of the fact we've actually made it a par 3 this year. It's 115 meters, and there is an AT for that with 115, and there's a BT at 100 meters. There is an out of bounds along the left side, which will be marked with a rope. This is because just inside the bush line on the left-hand side, there's actually quite a good drop, pretty much a cliff into the stream. So we don't want anyone getting injured diving in and getting the disc. So if you do go in there and you're trying to retrieve a disc, be very cautious because it does drop away and it kind of sneaks up on you from personal experience. The only other out of bounds is a fence line behind the basket, a few meters. So that one will play as a standard OB if you go over that fence line. Next hole is number 11. That's an 87 meter par 3, same as last year, no OB, pretty self-explanatory. Nothing too challenging for you guys here, just to get it up in the open and give yourself a putt. Hole 12, this is a new hole, going actually up the fence line of the boundary on the left hand side. So there is an out of bounds line along the left, which again is just stopping you from having some pretty awful footing for your next shot on the left hand side, and we don't want anyone injuring themselves on a slope where it can be quite slippery. So it's slightly uphill, 58 meters, par 3. Should be a good challenge, I think, but shouldn't pose too many issues to most of you. And then on to hole 13. This is another one which is unchanged from last year. This is the triple Mando hole. We have the big wooden frame in the obstacle course, which is the object that you have to make it through. We've got 2 vertical posts and as a horizontal one on top. You must go between or underneath the top one and in between the 2 side ones to have made the Mando. If you miss the Mando, make sure you don't have to miss it again, the drop zone is right below the Mando. So yeah, that should be, other than that, should be fairly simple for everyone. Moving on, hole 14. This is a new one. We're utilising the water slide that they've got built at the scout camp. Going uphill 50 meters, par 3. There is an out of bounds area which encompasses the whole of the water slide. So any of the black plastic which the water slide is constructed from, that stuff's really slippery. So that's one reason we don't want anyone on there. We also don't want it getting damaged by people constantly walking over it. So if you can avoid walking on it with, unless you've got to retrieve a disc, please go around it. If you do land on it, that is an out of bounds shot from the tee, and from the tee, your next shot, if you land on it, will be going to a drop zone on the left hand side of the out of bounds area. Any subsequent shots that go onto the plastic will just go from where they entered the out of bounds, or from where they were last in bounds, I should say. Yeah, and that's that hole. Pretty simple. It's fairly short, so shouldn't pose too much issue. On that, Next hole, we're going to hole 15. This is a modified hole from last year. We've got essentially a double dogleg on this one. Hopefully with the new setup, we should be bringing people a little bit further away from the out of bounds line. That line is there again to stop people having to play from down in the guts of the gully, which for those of you who went down there or lost discs down there, it's almost impossible to get out of once you're down there. So any shots that go into the out of bounds or across the out of bounds line will be taken from where they were last in bounds. Other than that, there's not too much issue on that hole. From there, we're going down the hill down to hole 16 on the field. A bit of a change of order from last year. So we're walking down, as we were last year, down the walking track to the cabins. Once you get to the cabins, please try to avoid, well, actually don't walk across to the island hole. You're going left as soon as you get down the bottom of the hill and behind the cabins. And from there, you're going down the four-wheel drive track to the field. With that, you get down to the bottom of the field, you'll find the wood chipped area in front of the climbing wall there, and that's actually your tee for 2 holes, but the far end of it is the tee for hole 16. This is the same hole as we used last year for hole 1. So the distance or anything, nothing is really going to have changed. The only change to the hole is that there's been some river protection put up where the basket was last year. So the basket's now up on a slight rise overlooking the river. The river plays as OB as normal, but I don't think it will cause too many issues for most people. Moving on, hole 17. This one is a new hole. It's the same tee as we used last year, but we've changed the hole after that entirely. You have a tree on the left side of the fairway that is a mando. You must go to the right side of that tree. And then we also have the basket placed on an island in the river. So obviously with it being an island, you must make the island or make the basket to be safe. But it's only in the river that the discs are out of bounds. But yeah, other than that, it should be fairly obvious. We're going to make some fairly obvious markings around the island for what's inbound and what's outbounds. But if you've got any questions at the weekend, get in touch and we will clarify it for you. Next hole, hole 18. That's a par 3, 69 meters. Fairly simple hole. The only out of bounds here is the river. Just got to get into the right at the end of the shot to have a look at a putt, but shouldn't be too hard to safely navigate. Hole 19. This hole is almost the same as it played last year. Due to some tree clearances, we have moved the green to the right a little bit, and we've also made the green an enclosed island. So once you cross the river, to be safe, you need to land on the island. So yeah, from there, if you do not land on the island, you'll be taking your next shot from where it crossed into the OB, which will be at the out of bounds line on this side of the river. That line is marked this year, the out of bounds line on the near side of the river, to stop people standing on the really steep riverbank trying to take a stance where it's a bit dodgy. So we've brought you back, so if you do go long into the river, you'll be playing from up on the level field instead of down halfway down a riverbank trying to stand up. Other than that, the OBs are the same as last year. So if you go on or over the four-wheel drive track on the left side, that's the only other option there. Hole 21. This is a new hole. It's par 3. Sorry, hole 20, not 21. Hole 20 is a new hole. Par 3, 71 meters. There is a mando tree on the right side of this one, so you must pass to the left of that tree. and obviously the river is OB as well. Other than that, that hole's fairly simple. Now on to hole 21, which is the key hole. This is the one we played last year. Hasn't changed. It's 125 meters from AT, 105 from the BT, OB running along both sides and narrowing up to the green, and then it also runs around the back of the green as well and sides of the green. So just a bit of course management on this one, but there is an opportunity for big throwers to get a birdie look. Hole 22, that's unchanged from last year. The only slight change to the OB line on the right side between the two holes, 21 and 22, is that the OB line now continues up to the corner of the buildings. So if you go right of that line from hole 22 or 21, you'll be in the other fairway, so that'll be out of bounds. This is so there's a par 4, 155 meters, and there will be a BT on this one as well. Hole 23, last one on the lower fields. This is another new one. This is the second river crossing. In this hole, the river plays as a normal river, so you'll be able to establish whether or not you're in bounds once you get to your disc if you don't make it over the river. The only other out of bounds on this hole is the same four-wheel drive as on hole 19, so if you're on or past the four-wheel drive track on the left, that will be out of bounds as well. After that hole, we are moving up the track back to the base. 2 holes left, so hole 24 is another new hole. It's a par 3, 55 meters into the trees from the open. The only difficulty here with out of bounds is quite a long way past the back of the basket. This is another out of bounds line for safety reasons. There is a cliff that's used for abseiling beyond the basket, and we don't want people obviously falling off cliffs. So if your disc goes really long, don't just go running off there to go and get it. If you're not sure, if you can't see it, give us a yell before you head over there, and we'll see if we can head down there and get it for you. But other than that, the hole should play pretty much as you see it when you get there. And after that, you'll be moving to hole 25. This is the final hole, the island hole. It's exactly the same as last year, with the only change really being we've clarified the out of bounds rules on this one to make it a bit simpler and a little bit less ambiguous. So there is a safe area in front of the tee, but other than that, once you cross over the road, the only safe area you can land on is the green. We're no longer allowing shots that have gone long to the grassy area by the cabins or to the left of the island to be inbounds. So to be inbounds, you need to be on the island. And that's pretty much as simple as it gets. After that, you are all done and you've finished your round at the Hyzlander for this year. You'll have another one to go. As I said earlier, I definitely recommend on a lot of the holes using spotters. And with that said, just to clarify, when you're spotting, try and if you know you're going to be the last person off the tee, get yourself up the hole and volunteer to spot, because it will help with just moving the cards on and not having too many holds up or backlogs around the course. So if you're last on the tee for that hole, please try and move up on most holes as a spotter, unless it's a wide open one you can see everything. But yeah, I'd recommend it on most holes because there is some deceptive rough just off the fairways. But other than that, you should be good to go, and we will see you here having looked through this players meeting online for the tournament at Hyzlander at Wyra Scout Camp in Dunedin. We'll see you there. Thanks.